Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. Today, we have Stephanie Benedetto with us, and Stephanie is usually the person that you hear introducing other people. But since she is the speaker today, I get to be the host, and this is Bonnie. And let's see, Stephanie said, give her a Bonnie intro. So what do I know about Stephanie? I know that if you talk with Stephanie for more than a couple of minutes, you will be laughing because she is one of the best laughers, best, the happiest people that I know. And that has been true for every single time that I've ever talked with you, Stephanie. So I love that. And I remember when we set up a call with you and Dickin to help write the copy for one of our events. I don't remember which one it was. That's what I said to Dickin too. I said, you're just going to enjoy her because between the two of you, you are just going to be laughing the whole time. And it was true. So we'll see if I'm correct on this. And now I'll let you talk about the rest of what you do.
Thank you, Bonnie. And thank you so much for indulging me with that Bonnie intro. I thought it would be really sweet to hear, and it was. So yes, at the Awakened Business, I oftentimes call myself a coach, storyteller, and unmarketer. But I don't know if those titles really apply so well anymore. What I'm really interested in doing is help people to enjoy their lives. And I do that in the context of business a lot. So in the context of working with entrepreneurs, many of whom are coaches or transformational entrepreneurs in some way, shape, or form. They really have a mission and a purpose to make the world a better place. And my mission for them is to really just help them lighten up and have fun in what they're creating, because what an amazing time we can have in creativity when we let go of the stress and pressure that we don't realize we're creating with our thinking. So the three principles is certainly foundational, and more, that's the conversation I want to be having. Who we are and how we work, how we create our reality. And that informs so much about what we create in life. So that's what I do with the Awakened Business. And I also have, I wanted to mention to you guys, because this might be particularly of interest to you, a monthly group that I co-host with Tom Maddox, who's actually on this call too, called Love in Action, Sharing the Three Principles. And I will put a link in the chat in case you want to check it out. So every fourth Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, we meet and we talk about something around sharing the three principles, because so many of us who've been touched by this understanding really want to share it. And that was my journey in business too. At first, when I came across the three principles, I didn't have a great desire to understand it or to talk about it. And I loved it. I just wanted to be in the feeling of it. Looking back, I think that was really wise for me, because if I had tried to understand it, it would have stayed conceptual instead of doing the magic and miracles that it really worked for me. But over the years, I started to realize, oh, I never thought I'd be a transformational coach. And then I end up getting certified through Michael Neal's Super Coach Academy just last year. So it was like, step after step, I was like, oh, I do want to understand this. I do want to talk about this. I do want to share it. Oh my God, I am a transformational coach. Apparently, it sort of snuck up on me. So that's just a little bit about me and my background. And the topic that I chose for today, and I called it Flow, Creating Your Life with Love. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I love creation. I love helping people create their lives and things that they love inside of their lives. And inside business, it's a really fun area for me to play. And in the business and self-development world, this word flow, it has different meanings, right? So what are we talking about when we're talking about flow? Sometimes there's a book called Flow, and that talks about flow as sort of the state that you get into when you're working in particular. That's what they talk about in the context of self-development, where you're just in it. There's not a lot of thinking happening. It's high performance state. It's like your highest performance state. And athletes talk about this often when they're actually in a game, that this happens. And it's become this ideal, like, how can you be in flow more, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about, but also not what I'm talking about with flow. Because yes, it's actually when we're at our best, but I don't think it's a state. I think it's our natural being is flow. And I also think it's really normal for us as human beings to feel like we're in and out of it. So the flow that I'm interested in is something that feels like it's always there. The flow of life, the flow of aliveness, mind, as we call it in the three principles, divine mind, universal mind. It's what's happening and you can feel it. And when I talk about it right now, the feeling of it is really nice. But no matter what's happening, that's always there. And I can always rest in it. And exploring, creating your life with love is creating your life from that flow, knowing yourself as that flow, in that flow, surrounded by it. So in the three principles, this is fun because I'm going to talk a little bit about the three principles. And I do not consider myself an expert at all, but I think it's really beautiful to see how I express, how I share what I'm seeing, what I've seen. And there are some expressions, these are partly borrowed from Michael Neal, but I've changed them a little bit to talk about mind, consciousness, and thought, just a little. These things that we can't really talk about without sounding like crazy people or mystics or both. So I love thinking about what it might mean to live from mind, to live from this flow, to live from this sense of aliveness. And the thing is that we already are. Whether we recognize that we are, whether we feel like we are or not, living from mind for me is, it's feeling it. It's starting with mind as I live my life. So an example of that might be, I do coaching conversations, and sometimes I can tell I'm really caught up in my intellect. And when I feel that and I recognize it, I go, that's not where I want to come from. Where do I want to come from? Mind. What if I come from mind? What if I live from mind? What if I listen from mind? And immediately I'm going in. Not in my body, right? But looking within in a different direction, and something slows down and I feel in touch with the flow of life. And that for me is what living from mind is like. And it's always happening anyway. There's nothing I really have to do in any of the stuff I'm going to talk about, by the way, because the three principles are always at play. And it just is. So it's something that sometimes I'm paying attention to and sometimes I'm not. And then the second piece, consciousness, being consciousness. Wow, I had an experience of that earlier this morning. My friend Tom was there when I was leading a little experiment, and I put everyone into breakout rooms and myself included. And the idea was to listen to now. So you're in this breakout room with a partner, and listen to now and notice what you notice, And if something wants to be expressed as words or movement, then do that. But listen to now, just 5 minutes. And if you're silent the whole time, that's fine. And so as I was in this breakout room with Tom, actually, I was right away noticing the movement, and there was movement to speak, because sometimes hearing myself speak, I hear myself say something I've never heard before, right? Like I'm like, oh wow, that's interesting, right? Because I'm not really thinking about it. It's just sort of happening. And I was wondering about now and listening, and I would talk for a little while, and then I would pause and I would listen and wait. And it was cool because I could actually feel the movement again. It was nice as an experiment, right? Maybe you'll notice it now as you're listening, even listening to me. There's a movement in you. I mean, get a sip of water or shift your position. So I was doing this. And at one point I said, wow, listening to now. I can't remember what I said. Something about now. Oh my, and I was like, wow, I can see these thoughts coming through, right? And I said, these thoughts are moving through now. And I went, I'm now. What? And I just started laughing because I had this sense of being consciousness, like being that space of awareness, being that now through which everything is happening. And it was so beautiful and funny. And I just laughed my ass off, actually. And Bonnie's right. I do laugh a lot because, and it just seems really funny. It was like, why was I laughing? I can't even tell you. It was delightful. And also I was laughing because there's a contrast to how I often think about my small self and all my concerns. And I'll talk about that a little more in a bit. So that's what I think of as being consciousness. And then the third, right? The principle of thought, playing with thought. Because thought is this creative energy, right? I love playing with thought. Sometimes I play with thoughts and I'm always doing it, or a lot of the time I'm doing it. I play with thoughts that don't feel good, and then I don't feel so great. I play with thoughts that feel fun and curious, and I get to feel really fun. And becoming more aware of that, like watching the thoughts that I'm playing with, the ones that I'm putting my attention on, the ones that are lighting up this space of consciousness that's me, and I'm actually messing with them, and that I have a choice in it, that I don't have to, even when I can't seem to stop myself, has changed my life for sure. And these are the things that I do my best to share in the ways that I can with other people, and that I'm doing my best to share with you. So what I see is that living from mind and being consciousness and playing with thought, is those elements create a life that comes from love, that is love. And not as an aspiration, like something we have to do, but just something that's always already happening. I think it's already happening. It's only our thought created experience that lets it be any different than that. And there's no should in that. So it's kind of hard. And most of the people that come to me as a coach, especially if they want to work on their business, are tuned into one of two things. Either something that's going on that they wish wasn't, or something that they want that they don't have. And that's just common. That's same for me. Sometimes if I go to a coach, I'm going to bring my problems, or the things that I think are problems, and the things that I want to create that I don't have, or I think I don't have yet. And what I'm finding, and maybe you've heard it in I call them the OGs of the 3Ps, the original gangsters in the Three Principles community, the ones who've been in this conversation for a long time, that it seems like less and less do they talk about, or are they even interested in, our problems and our struggles, and more so, what's alive in you? How is wisdom moving in you already? And I'm starting to see this too, that in creating our lives, it's really understandable, by the way, that it's tempting to, and we're taught in so many ways, that we need to focus on the issues and the problems in order to solve them and think about them in order to make them go away or resolve them or find a solution. But it's like throwing gasoline on the fire, isn't it? It's like, because when I realize that there is no problem until I think of it as a problem. My problem is always made of thought. Now, there might be a real challenge in my life, something I'd like to create or something that an obstacle in my path, but that's not a problem. That's just what is until I make it up as a problem. And then I think that I need to think more about it and more about it and more about it to solve it. And I see this with these beautiful people who come to me, and I'm starting to notice that we really don't need to pay attention to that. If we just spend a couple of minutes in this experience of mind, this space of consciousness, wow, things really start to settle. And I'm finding right now everything that I'm looking for. The peace that I was looking for right here, dropping out of my thinking. The solutions, the ideas, the fresh thinking that I'm looking for to resolve or move through those obstacles happens right here. I can hear it most clearly in this space of quiet and peace. And it's not something that I want you to believe me about. I just want to pose it as a question, like, what if you really don't have to pay attention to what looks like a problem? And this is different than denial. It's not denial that I'm talking about. Because when you're in the present, when I'm there, I'm aware. I'm aware. You know, I notice what's happening around me. I notice if my body needs nourishment. I notice if the people around me need assistance with something. I notice, in fact, I notice it more now that I'm calm. My vision has broadened and I can see animals around me and the environment and things that I never dared think about before because I was too afraid to look at it. So it's something to consider. What if instead of thinking about the problem that you have, you shift your attention to enjoying your life and enjoying what's available to enjoy right in this moment and see what happens. I want to tell you a couple stories about experiences of flow, just to give you some ideas of what it might look like. But I don't think it looks like any one thing. That's why I want to share a couple stories. And then I want to open this up for questions from you or things that are moving in you. So I always had this story about myself that I can cook. This is a really ordinary experience of flow. I'm going to call it that, right? That like, yeah, I can cook, but only if I have a recipe to follow, because I'm just not creative with cooking. And a couple weeks ago, I don't know why, something started to shift that way. So like in the past, I'd need to have all the ingredients and the recipe or like, you know, I mean, I could throw stuff together, but I always felt like I just wasn't doing a good job of it. And I just noticed that if I didn't pay attention to that story and I showed up with the refrigerator and whatever foods I had, something occurred to me. And I ended up, just the other day, I ended up like I had this sesame tempeh in the fridge, and I had leftover roasted sweet potatoes and I had some greens, and I ended up like sauteing the tempeh and putting it over the sweet potatoes and the greens and avocado and like some cool dressing. And I went, oh my, this looks really pretty. I just made, like, I created a meal and I didn't need a recipe. How about that? And it was really good. I went, that story wasn't true. And I could feel that as flow because I wasn't going into my story about how I'm not a good cook and I need a recipe. It was like things just occurred to me. Oh, try this, try that. And now it wasn't a gourmet meal, but I was really excited about it because, wow, I guess I don't need recipes every time I want to make something that tastes good. That's a really simple example. And then a couple weeks ago, I had a response from someone who'd been interested in doing one-on-one coaching with me. And she said, "Oh, I'd really like that, but not sure I can do it right now. Do you happen to have a small group coaching program that might be more affordable?" And it's like, I don't, but I could, right? So this idea occurred to me and it like just dropped in, ping. It wasn't like I knew I was doing it or anything, just like this little idea. So I'm like, I wonder. And without thinking about it, it occurs to me to like send a couple emails and see what happens. I get some responses. People are interested and they're talking to me now. I'm like, that's cool. And then I say, all right, well, I want to find out what you guys think. So I'm going to host a Zoom and tell me what you'd want out of a small group coaching program. And the people show up and they're amazing. And the things they're asking for, amazing. Like, I would love to do that. But still, it's not like I have a plan to do this. It's not a program. Like one step at a time. It's like the universe and I are playing. The universe is like, how about that? What do you think of that idea? I'm like, I like that idea. Oh, I'm going to do this with it. And then the universe goes, here, how about this? And I'm like, oh, I like that. Let's do this. And it's forming and it's happening and it's creating. And I didn't think about it. I didn't sit down and plan it. Now, after listening to people, I did sit down. It did occur to me to sit down and go, what does this look like? What kind of structure? Like the logistical things. But the place that it came from, it didn't feel like that required any effort at all. That feels like flow. That feels like living from mind and playing with thought. So that's another example. But the third example of flow happened yesterday. So this is very fresh for me. And this one, not so fun. I'm having a wave after wave of insecure thinking. And I'm caring for these two dogs right now. They're big dogs and they're following me. You know how dogs follow you around everywhere from room to room. And all three of us, the one is a Great Dane. So he's huge. He's over 100 pounds. And three of us are trying to go down the stairs at the same time. And they're bumping into me. And I'm like, these dogs are so annoying and pulling me on the leash. And I'm feeling insecure. I'm like, I'm getting old and I have wrinkles and look at this. And I'm not any good at that. And I knew I was doing it and wasn't able to stop. But I was talking to a friend about it and almost, not quite laughing at myself, but like almost like I could just this close to seeing how silly it was and how ridiculous. I knew how ridiculous I was being. And I was just complaining about everything. And I've got all this stuff and I didn't do this and on and on. All right. And my friend actually said to me, your insecurities make me laugh. Not because I'm laughing at you. He didn't explain any more than that, but I actually heard it. I heard it. I was like, you're right. And I think I had a sense, even when I was in it, of flow. Like part of the flow are those shitty moments too. There's an up and a down. That's how I was feeling my thinking. And thankfully, I didn't do anything harmful to anybody else in that state. I was probably doing some harmful thinking to myself. But like there's nothing that isn't flow about that. The way it moves through is flow. So I don't think it's something to judge myself or for you to judge yourself about, like it's some kind of a standard to try to attain. It's more like a question to ask, a question to live into, like the Rilke quote, live the questions themselves. And one day you may live your way into the answer. And I feel that way about flow, about what is this living from the aliveness, living from love? It's a question to be lived and discovered, not something to be understood or attained. So that's what I wanted to share about my experiences of flow and kind of seed this rest of this conversation. So I'm interested to know if you might have a question around flow or living from this, or perhaps there's something new that you're seeing or noticing right now. I'd love to hear about it. And how do you want to do it, Bonnie? Just they can unmute themselves, and what do you prefer?
Yep, this is your talk, so yes, any way that they want to.
Any way you want.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah.
Any way you want.
I knew you were.
No.
I won't make anyone listen to my singing now.
Oh,
Margit has her hand raised.
yes.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Great to see you.
Yeah, it's really nice to be here because I got a problem. Is it okay if just tell in a few sentences, a very short story, and then I have a question?
Okay, short story and question. That sounds good to
The
me.
very short story is my relatives are coming from Europe for 10 days, and my husband informed me they are not allowed to stay at my house, even though he likes them. He never wants any visitors again. I labeled my husband as a narcissist many years ago, which at moments I give up. I think it's funny sometimes, but that's the experience I have of him. And he needs to be in control of everything. So since he informed me the last 3 days, I haven't fixed breakfast, lunch, and dinner for him. And last night he wanted
Ooh, juicy.
I stopped everything. And so my question is, on one hand, I have fun with this. On the other hand, I feel sometimes I don't live from the energy that I want to live from. Like I have like last night here, I said, do we have any Benedettos in the house? And on one hand, I wanted to say, well, you tell me constantly, you don't need me, you don't want me. So get it yourself. But I didn't say anything. So that was awesome for me. But I also didn't get it for him. I thought, no, I'm not going to go at 10 o'clock at night out to the store, which I would have done before, because I feel like, I always give. But what I learned is I sometimes do things for other people because I want to be liked by them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really saw through this program. And I'm not going to do this anymore. Just if I want to do it, I'll do it from my heart, but I don't want to do it just so you like me. Mm. But what's happening right now is I'm having a really hard time.
Yeah. So what's your question?
My question is am I trying to manipulate him, or I have a fears I can see now is that if I would be living my life, like being totally nice and making breakfast, lunch, and dinner and mending and doing all the stuff I always have done, is that he will keep taking advantage of me. He will.
So I have a question.
I'm in conflict with myself, do I feed him or not?
well, first of all, the fact that you think it's funny, that you can see that it's funny, like
it is.
I'm not going to make you any meals because you're not letting me have my family. Like, so you're not stuck in it, even though you might be doing it. And like me yesterday, I was almost laughing at myself for being so complaining, like you're not so stuck in it. You're seeing stuff. You're seeing something here, which is really cool. The question I want to ask you is, can you tell the difference between when you're living from the feeling you want to be living in and when you're living from the old stories that you have about your husband and your relationship? Can you tell the difference between the way they feel?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure really, to be honest, I know that I'm not in the energy right now of totally being absolutely happy and doing my work. I'm writing my second children's book right now, and it does consume me sometimes, and I can let it go sometimes. I really don't have the answer for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that I would just like to, like I said, I have an interesting relationship, but my nature as a human being is to cuddle with people, to love them, to adore them, to
So
make tea
wait,
for them.
pause there for a moment. Can you
And
tell
I don't have that.
Yeah, can you tell the difference between how it feels to cuddle and love people and be with people the way you want? How does that feel?
Oh, I'm in my element. I love it.
Yeah, you love it. It just feels good, right? You're
Yes.
in your natural. And how does it feel right now to be with your husband most of the time?
Oh, for the last 12 years, it has been an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. So
Until I found this program
So
where
you
now I have relief
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
doing the
you
work,
can
but
you
it's
can tell
not
the
shouldn't be,
difference. You can tell the difference.
yes.
You're feeling that like when you're cuddling and you're the natural feeling, you're being you. You're living from this moment. And when
Yeah.
you're feeling anything else, you're caught up here. And it has nothing to do with your husband. And I've heard you talk before, so you're kind of onto that too. I know it.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
onto
no, I
it.
know.
And all you have to do is feel it to know where you're at. That's it. And just notice it. That's it. And keep doing it. Because you are seeing. I can tell because you're laughing. And I've heard you speak before. And that's beautiful. Like you actually can just come back, hang out with us in this beautiful feeling and see where it takes you. It does such miracles without needing to focus on the problem. And things will start to look different. I don't know when, but they will. They already are. So that's what I got. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. No, that's good. That's good.
Cool. And thank you for asking that, It's good. Like if something looks like a problem, just because I'm calling it made up of thought, let's call it out. This looks like a problem to me. This is a problem. I see this, because otherwise we're just bullshitting ourselves, Cool. Any other questions or comments? What are you noticing? I see Rick's hand. Hi, Rick.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon. You said something that was kind of interesting, and I never considered it before, about the difference. Like originally, I would look at flow state as being something like lost in, but in reflection, it would be like a good thing. But you also pointed out that there's a possibility that you could also be in flow state, and then in reflection, that wasn't a really good experience, or having something more on it. And I'm starting to reflect. I think there's an element of truth there that may be worth exploring, because when I'm plugged in or in it in my head, I may not notice it. So I'm in some kind of flow state until I notice it. I come out of it. Very much similar to a working flow state, where you come out of it and it's go like, oh wow, like there was no time. Everything just went by. And so there is some similarities that I'm starting to notice, that when I'm in my head and not knowing it, there's an absence of presence. There's an absence of consciousness. There's an absence of something there. So anyways, I just thought you evoked an interesting exploration for me.
Oh, cool. I think maybe I didn't make the distinction enough, because I'm using words, right? And I'm kind of giving different meanings than other people might have, between flow state, which I think is this experience we have of being lost in something and just kind of performing at our best, which feels good, clearly feels good. And being in the flow of life. And it feels really good to me to think that no matter how bad I feel, I'm always in the flow, you know? Do I always have that flow state experience? No, you know, but that's kind of what I was seeing last night when I was like, oh, I'm still in it. And life is still flowing through me with the same ease that I experience when I'm in flow state. I just am not feeling that ease of flow state, you know, but I kind of knew it was there. That makes sense.
Well, it does. It's sort of, it's almost like an on and off switch. And I brought this up with Michael Neal last week, because I found myself in a, like, I just noticed, oh geez, I'm really happy right now. Prior to that, I was just flowing along with life, but all of a sudden I started to label whatever was coming. Like, I noticed something and I felt, oh, I'm in a good feeling right now. And it interrupted for a moment. It's sort of like, because now I'm noticing it. And it's the same, I find, oh, I'm in a shitty mood right now. But prior to that, there was no recollection of it other than, oh, all of a sudden I'm noticing. So I like the idea that you're always in a flow. We're always flowing through something. And our greatest gift is, that I'm starting to realize more and more, is our ability to notice where we are in the moment and go back to wherever we want to go, because that's what's on offer too. Just because I was interrupted in my good feeling state didn't mean I guess that's gone now. Kind of thing. It's like
Yeah, that's really cool. That's cool that you're noticing that. And that's really just what my intention is, just to kind of throw something out there to get us to just think a little differently, or maybe follow your own feeling about something. I remember just last night, I'm listening to when I'm listening to a good friend of mine, and I was not listening, really not listening, right? Really out for a while. She was telling the story, and I just went following my own train of thought. And then I realized it. And I went, oh, let me be here with her. Oops. Like that little blip. Come on back. This is where I want to be. And I didn't give myself a hard time about it, because I thought actually it was really cool that I noticed it. Yeah. Tom, I see your hand.
Jeff, hey, this has been awesome. And I too have found that I do a lot of pet care and dog sitting and etc. And I find myself afterwards telling the stories that have just like irritated me to no end. And I find myself laughing. And someone pointed that out to me once, that I was telling this story. And they said, do you realize how much you're laughing when you're telling this story? I was like, oh yeah. So I definitely relate to that. But the thing I wanted to share was about, for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people, like oftentimes my current state of mind, or my, whatever you want to call it, sense of happiness or well-being, seems so dependent on how I'm looking at the future, how I'm looking at like what's coming, and when I'm in my life, and there have been times where I've had both, where, you just feel like you have all, so to speak, all your ducks in a row, whatever that means. It's sounds like a funny saying now, but things look like they're lined up and you feel really good. And then other times where it looks like nothing's lined up, and all you can see is like you're going to fall off a cliff in 3 months or a year, and that feeling. But what I'm seeing more is that, in terms of, if I am thinking about the future, like I can think of my assets, my qualities, opportunities that I see, right? Those are all kind of, they're created out of my thoughts. Obviously, I say that now. But what we're talking about, this flow, this, universal mind, isn't that, like, could you have a better setup? If you're going to think about the future, you don't have to, but if you're going to think about is there anything better than you could have. I mean, sometimes like when Sidney Banks would talk about universal mind and some others, he would say, well, that basically I'm talking about God. And I'm not religious. I don't use the word God very much, but if you think of what we're talking about as being the equivalent, the same as God, and you're walking into the future with God or a universal mind or flow, like talk about having all your ducks in a row, and this still is, even as I say that, it's a little conceptual to me. Like it's a little abstract, but yet I can also feel it. Like I can feel it. And then it just kind of takes the future off the table. Comes back to what you said you discovered today, the now.
That's so funny. You know what comes to me, Tom, in hearing what you're saying is that flow has a sense of direction. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a future or past, because that's something that's really a thought created experience, because I don't know where it's going. But flow has a direction, like flow has a movement. It has a so even without thinking about a future, I can just follow the flow, be moved by the flow. There's nowhere I have to go. There's nothing I have to do. And wouldn't it be cool to follow this flow and see where it takes me, like into the future, if I want to give it those words, but I don't have to. And that's super cool.
Yeah.
And another thing that came to me, because you were saying putting your ducks in a row, getting all your ducks lined up, right? That metaphor, I don't know if this is true because I didn't verify this, comes from the idea of, how ducklings follow the mama duck?
Yeah.
So you get your ducklings in a row and then everything's like you got everything all together, like it's all happening, right? But what's interesting is that we want to get our ducks all lined up, get our ducks in a row, and then do something, right? That's usually how we use the phrase, I'm going to get my ducks all lined up and then I will ... But if you look at real life in that metaphor, the ducks don't go anywhere. The ducklings don't line up until the mama duck starts moving. So if you want to get your ducklings, whatever they are, lined up behind you, you gotta move. You gotta flow, right? And that may have nothing to do at all with what you're saying, Tom, other than the metaphor came up, but I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, I love that too. Because I know so many times in my life, I have felt that way, that I'm not going to move until, and you really nailed it there, that you can just keep moving. And the other thing that I'm saying is you can just move. We've talked about this before. You can just move anywhere in any part of your life. You may be wanting to create a business and maybe feel stagnant or whatever, but you can just start moving in other parts of your life and get that movement, tune into the movement. So I love that about the moving first and then getting the ducks.
I see this is again something that's very alive for me, and probably also in the kinds of conversations I have around creation, is that just move something. Just move something. Because I see that what I've seen happen is that this isn't true for everyone, but I see it a lot, is that especially entrepreneurs, when they get involved in a business, and this was me, it's like, I have to make things happen. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go, I'm going to push, and all these things. And I'm learning all of the right ways to do things and creating pressure to get myself to do things. And it starts to feel harder. First it's exciting and then it's harder. And then I'm like, why is this feeling so hard? Not realizing that I'm creating all these stories in my mind and I'm feeling all that pressure in my thinking. And then I'm like, I'm not going to do this, right? So what I've seen in the Three Principles community is that people were using so much pressure to motivate themselves to do things. I have to, I must, I should. And then they start to catch on that, I don't have to. Oh, it feels so good to not do something. And they drop out of their thinking, but then they kind of start to mistakenly associate doing stuff with creating pressure. And so they don't want to do, which makes perfect sense, by the way. Like, it's just a part of that journey. It's like experimenting. And then they say, well, how come I'm not getting these results in my life? How come I'm not getting these results in my business? I don't want to push myself. Well, you got to move. You know, it's like, it's a dance with the universe, and you don't have to, like, but if you want the universe to play with you, you kind of need to, like, I described it the other day as like playing tennis. You got to swing, or you got to roll the die. You got to be in the game of it if you want to create something. You don't have to. We don't need to, but we can. And I'm really interested in that. And I'm interested in that journey being really fun and light and playful and not heavy. And it's okay when it feels heavy, but we know what's going on. We know we're up here, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thanks, Steph.
And any more stuff, questions, thought-provoking questions, problems, insights to share? What are you noticing? Got a little more time left at least. Did I see a hand, Dwight? And I saw Nancy too. I saw Dwight first though. We'll get you, Nancy.
Not sure if this is a thought-provoking. The thing that was coming up for me as everybody was speaking is, I was at lunch the other day with someone, and she was talking about, we were talking a little bit about religion. And she thought, she said, isn't it interesting how we have these different religions throughout the planet, but the underlying messages tend to be the same. You can have this religion, that religion, maybe some of the words are a little bit different, but ultimately they're the kind of the ground underneath it is the same. And that got me thinking about flow and universal consciousness. And she was saying, you know, I had this idea about this book I wanted to write, and it was just so clear to me that this topic, but life happened and I didn't get to it. And all of a sudden, bing, I see this book that somebody wrote on the same exact thing. Isn't that interesting how the universe just puts these ideas and thoughts and concepts out for anybody to grab onto? And then somebody takes the chance to hold on to that and to write maybe some of their own perspective, which is why it's not exactly the same everywhere, but it's got a lot of the same flavoring. And different things you were saying, as well as other people here, I've had a lot of these same ideas and thoughts, like movement. That's one of the things I talk to my clients about. It says, I mean, you can think all you want about exactly how much money you want, you know, this idea of manifestation, just think about it. But until you do something, nothing happens. And so now here it is again, we're talking about the same thing. And I just find it fascinating that these things are always around us, and you can choose, or you can call it whatever you want, but it's kind of the same thing. That's really all I wanted to share.
Yeah, I like that, Dwight. Thank you. No, and I think that I'll still say, I don't need to use the words the three principles or flow or God or whatever. If we're pointing to what's true, what is, and noticing what isn't, I really like that lately. Like, what is, being with what is as opposed to what isn't. Certain things, it's very clear, it's very simple, and certain things are, that's just it, right? Either it is or it isn't. It's something that's real, that's there for us, that's always at play, that's here, or it's something that changes and moves and passes away. And it is the same in different traditions, the wisdom traditions or self-development. And we feel it. That's the coolest thing, is that we can feel it inside of ourselves. Like we have this truth detector. It's a homing beacon, and it's like, I'm going to suggest pointing within to that truth. That's how we know, because it's pointing within. We already have it and we can feel it. I remember one day I was at home and I have a lot of different books on my shelf from different wisdom traditions. And I just started picking them up and just opening them randomly. And I'm like, oh my God, this is talking about the same thing. And this is they're talking about the same thing. And I've been exploring the same thing through all these paths since I was a kid. Whoa. And they were different flavors and had different energies, but they were pointing in the same direction, which is why I was always drawn to it. And that's because I felt it, right? I felt it inside, pointing me in. And a lot of times I thought it was pointing me out. Like I didn't know that's where it was actually pointing me. I thought it was in this religion or following this person or in this practice. Eventually, I've come to see that the reason I even knew it in the first place is because it was already here in me. How cool. Yeah, thanks, Dwight. And Nancy. Oh, I think your sound isn't working. You're not muted, but it looks like your microphone isn't working. Yeah, I don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll take this off. Sometimes this has an issue, whatever. But the thing that kind of the pearl that I'm walking away with is there was something about when you said the feeling, because I hear in the 3P, and of course in anything about the 3P, it's always like returning to the feeling. It's all the feeling, the feeling, the feeling. And when you said that the feeling is the flow, and in that moment, I just had this sensation of course, it's the river, and rivers are never standing still. They're always in motion. And so it's that sense of the space inside is always in motion. It is motion. It's intelligent. It's this life, and that it's not separate from us. It's the separation happens when I go up here, think and think and think and think, and it's dropping back into that feeling. But there was something more about that the feeling is flow. And I'll just be with that. I just wanted to say it as that really caught my attention. Thanks.
Beautiful, Nancy.
Thank you.
And if I like the river, I like water because it feels to me like there's a flow in that feeling, and there's also deep stillness. Like if you went down to the bottom of the ocean, there's almost like nothing happening. It's quiet and there's nothing happening right there. And yet there's all this movement too. And that feels like life, like all the experiences. I don't know if it comes out of that stillness, but it sort of feels like it's all the one thing, right? Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I love that, the stillness, because even that stillness isn't still. There's still, it's a vibration of life itself.
Yeah.
And yet it just flashed in my mind. I remember one time we were like, okay, everybody bring a song for what's happening for you right now. And the song that came to me was like, I want to be under the sea in an octopus's garden in the shade. And people were like, well, that's really a dopey song. But I was like, oh, now I see why that came to me. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. And then we've got, I think, our last question for today, Bruce. Hi.
Hi, Steph. Not really a question, but a statement. When you mentioned the difference between what isn't and what is, it just brought to mind my way of thinking in the 3 Ps of consciousness, like a great elevator. And if we're at a highest level, we're kind of at the penthouse. And that's where it functions as it should. And when we're at a point of what isn't, we're at a lower level on that elevator. And as Sid would say, we're in a low mood. And if we're at a point of what is, we're approaching that penthouse level because we're just there to allow the flow.
Yeah, that's cool, Bruce. I like that. And we do have these different metaphors, right? Like the elevator and going higher is being with what is and being in a higher mood versus a lower mood. And then there's like this idea of going deeper too. Like we were talking about the ocean, you go deeper, right? Out of the chop at the top, down deep into this. And they're both beautiful. Neither one is like how it's not the thing itself, but I have a feeling for both of them. And they're lovely. Thanks for sharing that, Bruce. Yeah. I think that may be complete for the day, Bonnie.
I was going to ask if you wanted to close with any insights or comments.
Oh my gosh, good question. Yeah, I want to say something that it's funny. I have this funny feeling since I've been a host on these webinars for a while, and now I'm being the presenter, whatever that means. And like, honestly, I don't like you guys have this. You guys, each one of you, you have this. And I'm just grateful to be able to be here exploring it with you. And it feels really good because I hear and see wisdom moving through each one of you, through your words, through your energy. It's amazing. And we get to share it together in a group and experience it together. And it's my great privilege. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I love that. It reminds me of when Sid says, really, we're all the same. Yeah, that's a really beautiful realization to have. So thank you everyone who participated. And I just want to let you know that next month we have Dr. Tom Kelly, and he's going to talk about upside down and backwards, the innocent failure of mainstream psychology, which will be interesting. Yeah.
Very excited for that.
I know. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Bonnie, as always. And thank you, everybody who's been on the call. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, everybody. Bonnie.
Thank you.